Ballerina is the newest film from Len Wiseman starring Ana de Armas and is the newest film in the John Wick universe. Welcome back to my channel. If you love movies, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So the biggest question going into this movie and going into the John Wick universe as a whole in the last, year or so since John Wick Chapter 4 is, can this universe survive without the titular character of John Wick? And Ballerina is the first, introduction into a world post-John Wick. Although this takes place between the events of 3 and 4, and John Wick is heavily involved in the movie, it really is its own story at the core, following our character of Eve. Here's the synopsis. Taking place during the events of John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, Eve Macaro begins her training in the assassin's tradition of the Ruska Roma. Again, stars Ana de Armas, and I think that just going off the top, she is absolutely phenomenal in this. She brings the physicality to this, much like Keanu Reeves. While it is different, it still works, and it's highly, highly believable. You can tell that she committed to this role from the start, and she absolutely crushed it. And that's something that you desperately needed. You needed a character in this universe that could be an equivalent to John Wick. Someone that had the physical type of fighting style that went incredibly well in this universe. And I've already said it, and I will continue to say, Ana de Armas is one of the best parts of this movie. She brings a charisma, she brings a cold-bloodedness that you've come to expect from this universe, but she also puts her own spin on it. I think the difference between her and John Wick is just a cold-blooded killer. He is what he is, where Ana de Armas has a more, nurturing, merciful way about it, if that makes sense. She's got more of a conscience. She's not afraid to kill at any stretch of the imagination, but she also does take those consequences into perspective, and she also is much more nurturing in terms of collateral damage, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of that has to do with her past, which we get into in this film. A lot of this film is a revenge thriller, and that's fine for an opening film. I mean, that's kind of what the original John Wick is too. So you are kind of opening up that playbook once again, but that's perfectly fine because we are learning this new character. We are learning about the trials and tribulations. This is an origin story of Ballerina, and I think it worked. Do I think it's the best written, film in this series? Absolutely not. I gave writing 13 out of 15, so it's not by far the best writing that you've ever seen, and I do think that the villain is maybe a little bit one-noted, but at the end of the day, you still have the ability and you have the sandbox of the John Wick universe at your disposal. And one thing I like so much about the John Wick universe is the fact that it is such a vastly uncharted underworld. We only know what we know from the John Wick movies, and we only know what we know from the perspective of John Wick. But there are hundreds of thousands of assassins and people in this underworld that we have not even scratched the surface on. And I really liked it. I thought that you added another layer to this universe that I've already come to love. I love this world. From the first movie, they created such a rich mythos, such a rich backstory that feels incredibly lived in and incredibly real. And that continues here. You're adding another layer to this universe that we have never seen before. And they did it incredibly effectively. And did it believably, and did it in a way that did not feel cheap. You could have cheaped out in this movie and, added a whole bunch of nostalgia and a whole bunch of throwbacks from other movies. And they didn't really do that. They let Ana de Armas' character go out on her own and tackle her own struggles, trials, and tribulations. The Continental is always going to be there. Winston's going to be there. Other characters in the John Wick universe are going to be there because they're central parts of this world. But you can go off into these other branches and tell these other stories. And that is why when we examine the question, can the John Wick universe go on without the titular character? I think this movie proved it's an astounding yes, if you have the right characters involved, and if you have the right actors attached. Ana de Armas, you can tell, fully invested in this character, invested in the stunts, invested in the action, that she was able to carry this role and make it as believable as Keanu as Wick. So I absolutely loved that. The action in this is just as good as any of the movies. I know there's rumors about deep reshoots, and if that's the case, maybe a little concerning for the future, because you're not always going to have the original creator of this world helming the film. But this is a highly consumable, really well thought out, really well sequenced action movie. And that's all you can ask for out of this universe. This universe is the classic popcorn Taco Bell universe, as a Sean Chandler would say. It is really big, bold action sequences with every type of weapon in the book and new ways of, sending your enemies to their demise. They found new ways in this film to do that. I did like the John Wick element too. That is another thing that I really did enjoy because, again, it could have been cheap, it could have been tacky, it could have been nostalgia-based, it could have been all of that, but it wasn't. He did play a part in this story. While maybe you could argue he didn't even need to be in the story, he did play an integral part in the character arc of Eve. And I liked that. It didn't feel cheap. It didn't feel forced. At the end of the day, it worked. When we wrap all of this up, I think that Ballerina is a very formidable, very well-deserved branch-off story of this universe. It could have come off as tacky. It could have come off as forced. It could have come off as, like I said, overly nostalgic and having to, use all of these, callbacks to work. And it didn't need that. It told its own cohesive story within this already richly, plotted out world. And I loved it. I did. My score for Ballerina is an 89 out of 100. It falls in my top 10 of the year so far. Will it stay there? More than likely not. But if you love the John Wick universe, you're going to like this one too. Again, it all comes down to the commitment from Ana de Armas. She absolutely kills it. I think this is one of her best roles she's ever done. And that's saying something. So, if you love the John Wick universe, you're going to love this one. I highly recommend it. 89 out of 100. It gets my seal of approval. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching the review. Hope I got out all my words there. I'm trying out a new format where I just kind of go. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. We're going to have another review coming out in the next few days on the Phoenician scheme, and a lot more reviews coming out throughout the rest of the summer. Thank you all so much for watching once again. Make sure you subscribe if you have not already, like I've already mentioned. A lot more reviews coming out this summer. Have a great rest of your day, and until next time, we'll see you in the next video.